episode 10 of Finding North, coming late today to you on a Sunday. So for the first time in those now 10 episodes, we're actually recording on a Sunday evening instead of a Sunday morning. But we're still here, we're still doing it, so all good. So hi Fahim, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi Florian. All good, all good. I know it's very tempting to postpone this and do this on another day. I just felt it wouldn't be right to not do it on a Sunday, even if we just meet the deadline just before midnight. And also, I'm a little bit like treating this like a habit as well. And I've got this crazy method called the chain method, where you don't break the chain. So, where you make the commitment. I think we maybe have discussed this in episode 1 or 2. Yeah. And especially this one being our double-digit episode now.
That's a big one.
We thought, let's just, if you can do the 10, get into double digits, it's a good thing. Might as well get it out of the way.
Definitely, it's definitely a good milestone. Only thing it means, when we said initially that we're going to kick this off, we're going to do this because we have so much time at our hand. I'm not sure if we actually initially thought that 10 weeks later, first of all, those 10 weeks have passed pretty quickly considering we're in isolation. True. But also maybe we would not have really thought that this is going to last 10 weeks and all the other crazy things that are happening in the world at the same time, right? It's it seems like we're going from one crazy situation into the next one. So we touched on it slightly last week already, and you said we should definitely make it, I think, a topic of today, because not just because everyone is talking about, but because it's probably an important thing to just cover and discuss. So we're obviously talking about the global protests against racism, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, and all of that. So how have you followed the news and what's happening over the past couple of days?
Yeah, so of course, I think for those of our audience or those who know, in the protests have also been replicated in London, UK. So there were a lot of organized protests actually this weekend. So I think the UK is always trying, in these kind of situations, there's sometimes a mirror or a replica of it of some sort. It is sad, I must say. Even us talking about it on this show now, I don't want it to feel like we have to cover the subject because everyone else is, and if we don't, well, it's that you get that feeling. And I think many organizations, and not to say they're not being genuine to the thing, but that there is a feeling that you have to speak out, and if you're silent, it means that you're not really with it, or you're against it. So I think I always feel uneasy. Feeling that I have to mention something, and it shouldn't prove, and I think that's a sort of purity play in it. But I think it is sad, definitely what's happening out there. It took me a while. I'm not sure if you've seen the video of George Floyd, being kneed and all of that. So I knew the video was out there, but I'll be honest with you, it took me a week or two to watch it. I really didn't. I was worried about what I was going to see and how it's going to impact me, because I was already emotionally charged and whatnot. So I did see it. Very, very unfortunate. It's clear that whatever may have happened beforehand, there was unnecessary force used, and maybe there was some vendetta or whatever happens. There's all of that, but truly sad, actually. I'm still can't get the images out of my head watching the video and those sort of things. But I don't know, what are your thoughts? Have you watched the video yourself?
Yeah, so I think, well, I have a couple of thoughts, but on the video side, it's I'm always a little bit torn apart with those things, because I don't necessarily think that you honor anyone's death by watching the video, right? And and sharing it. It's a really fine line, because on one hand it informs, right, and it shows the ugly of the world, and sometimes you need to show it so people wake up, but at the same time it's like, if you know what happened, right, like I think sometimes also, like in nowadays world, people are just not so afraid anymore seeing those things, right? Like same with all the ISIS videos, and like all the Mexican truck cartel videos, and there's awful stuff out there, right? And I had unfortunate events where people showed me stuff that I really didn't want to see, and you cannot unsee them, right? And I think it affects everyone in a slightly different way. So, or with the terrorist attacks, because now everyone has like a cell phone, right? And then it go, you know, and some of the media outlets they ban it or blur it, but like someone somewhere on Facebook, somewhere on Twitter, or you know, you'll find those things, and it's a bit tricky sometimes. So that's the one thing on the video. On the protests in general, I think, I mean, for me, I'm with you on the, like, number one, I think what is happening right now with what a lot of companies now do just felt so ingenuine. Like, issuing a press release right now is not going to change anything, right? It's the same with all those bloody subject lines from every company. Oh, we're here with you, and in those unprecedented times, and like, you know, like just riding the wave and pretending now. It doesn't feel genuine for me. And
especially if they don't have the history behind it to back it up.
Exactly, right? So like everyone knew that there is inequality, you know, probably to some extent systematic racism, and I'm not just talking about the US. I think it's probably it's a global problem, right?
It's a global thing.
And now just suddenly, because people now really finally had enough, and it's like it's blowing up, and now suddenly organizations say something, it's just like, I just doesn't feel right. And also with certain people, I feel like, yeah, sometimes maybe people get you know, really wake up through those events, and then they speak up, right, and they're genuine about it, and I get that. But like I just feel when I open my phone now, and especially on social media, it's like everyone jumps on the bandwagon and suddenly has an opinion about it and shows empathy. And you know what's the problem here? I don't even mind that, because it raises awareness, but awareness with those people then actually taking action in their own life and their own behavior means jack shit. I'm sorry to, you know, to swear here, but that's the problem, right? And that's why I stayed away from like now jumping on that same, like, oh, I'm gonna repost everything, and I'm gonna, like, you know, maybe go to a protest, take a selfie video, and I find that almost awful. Like it really is, because I know with certain people they really mean it, and they really now start thinking about it. For many people, that's just it's just a little wave to ride until the next thing comes, and then they will forget about it.
Because content, right?
There were Black Lives Matters protests like 6 years ago, when I think it was 6 years ago, the last big wave, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And then, and then people participate, and then they forget about it. So I think for me, I think, you know, it sounds a little bit like a lame quote, but like action always speaks louder than words. And what a lot of people do at the moment, I think, is words. I think action, which means like you need to, in every day, everything you do, right? And when you listen to people, you need to take action to combat racism and bigotry and all that sort of stuff, right? So if you hear someone say something slightly inappropriate, and even if they mean it in a funny way, take action. Then, you know, say something, right. Speak up, say like, that's not right, you know, in your company. It's not, and next thing, vote the right way, you know, like not just go to a protest now and share like a Twitter, read something on Twitter. Next time you have a vote, you know, vote for the people who can actually make a change, right? So it's like, I think it's really good what's happening right now. I'm just afraid that so many people just ride like a short-term wave until the next thing happens, and then they're going to be distracted and they will forget, right? It's that's the main, like,
I feel you. Yeah, no. And hence why I think, you know, similar to your approach, I feel I'm not posting that stuff because I feel like, look, you need to first do the action before you can qualify to do that. Raising the awareness, you know, it's not a bad thing, but you know what? We've seen these waves come and go, right? So this is not the first time this is happening.
Exactly.
To this level. There were protests before, riots, looting, all of this sort of stuff. We remember it very well in the UK as well, and many times in the US. And you're right, it just disappears until something else appears and something else goes viral, right? And you know, that's the bit that I really worry about what's happening now, that this will just become one of those events and we'll move on to something else, really, unfortunately.
And I think that I'm not talking about the core, right? I think there's a core of people, and
absolutely, there are genuine people.
But the problem is, in normal times, they don't get the press coverage, so no one cares, right? Because like they are organizations, they work day in, day out to try to make a change. But now all the media coverage on that, because it's like the big hot topic that everyone talks about, right? But as soon as the media coverage moves on to something else, unfortunately, right, that's when the people who don't usually really think about that, they will also move on to the next thing. And that's where the problem is. And this will not, this is where the change then, I think, that doesn't really happen.
I think the biggest thing that what we can do, or whoever is in a position or is aware of this, is, like you said, we have to vote with our vote, obviously, but also vote with your wallet, vote with many aspects. You know, we live in a very, you know, democratic, you know, capitalistic world and things like this. And you know what? In a world where the consumer is right, then really fundamentally make changes if you feel that. And it doesn't matter that you feel, oh, it's just me, you know, do it for yourself first, you
100%.
know, really do it because that's how change really starts. If you believe in it, it doesn't matter if the world is against you. Slowly but surely, these things do take time, but before you know it, you know, if you do stay consistent, it really does help.
100%.
It also just reminds me, and it's obviously it's not the same level, but you know, it's something I felt strongly about, but I haven't shared it with many folks, or even on here. You know, the whole NHS clap thing on Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. that's happening in the UK, right? It was nice for 1 or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but at the end of the day, right, those claps aren't changing the NHS. Then it's not changing the policies or the investment that's going into it, you know. And honestly, many people came out and saying, look, let's stop clapping now and actually do some real change. It was a nice gesture. Don't get me wrong. Like a couple of times we got out, we supported it. You felt an emotional connection with those staff because they really put themselves out there. But, you know, I feel they deserve more than a clap on a Thursday evening at 8 p.m.
I'm 100% with you, right? It's like the clapping is a good thing. The protest is a good thing, right? If you feel, if you go to a protest, if you repost something, if you now talk with your friends about, if you now talk about, it's all good, right? But if you then stop as soon as it's not the hot topic anymore, right? And as soon as the protest and you forget, then you're a bigot. And the same is with the NHS, right? If you now go out and you clap because those guys do like a hell of a job, right? And no one can probably even imagine what some of those people have been going through in the hospitals and so on. But then the next time you're gonna vote, and you know, I'm not talking about like politics and parties now, but like you probably know, if you vote for that party over the last whatever years, they defunded. There was like systematic defunding of the NHS.
That's right.
So what do you expect? So okay, clap now, but the next time try to make some change. Either start some petitions, you know, like start collecting signatures or
signatures, write to your MPs, the government. You know what? I think sometimes people think that you can't drive change and all. And like you said, there are these core people that have been doing it for many years, and you know they've created movements, etc. I would say just hassling your member of parliament, right, that you've elected in your area or your city or whatever, and getting your neighbors to constantly ring the office, you know, SMS them, emails, letters, go to the office, meet them. Because, you know, in the UK, I think every MP, they've got like a weekly slot. You can go to like a local, I don't know, sometimes they have a local office. You can really discuss this. You know what? They'll feel the pressure. You know, they'll feel the pressure. They'll start talking about it. They'll start 100%. To change. And then, so I think a lot of, we have to use the system that's designed for change and just be effective change makers. And I get the whole awareness thing, and we live in a very viral, the viral content and whatever's happening at the world, everyone's jumping on it. You know, to a certain extent, I don't want to dismiss that as well, because you know what, it catches the media attention. It gives you the headlines. But then, like, don't lose momentum. You know, drive the change with it. So yeah, no, I'm.
Be aware of your short-term memoryism. I don't know if that's not a word, but like that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Because it's made by the media, because the media just chases after the next big story to get the clicks, get the attention. So they always need to come up with something new, right? And that has sort of made people into just living in a very short-term memory. People will so quickly forget. It's happening all the time. You know, like 4 weeks ago, probably a lot of people on those protests were probably sitting at home, afraid to even go to the supermarket. You know, because everyone was it was like, okay, the world's gonna go down. If you just if you just look at someone who potentially has corona, you might get it. And they were like, I'm pretty sure, right? But then move on, you adapt. That's the next business. And this is forgotten, short-term memory, you move on to the next thing. And that, I think that is the underlying fundamental problem behind all of this, that people just like, they're in this for now, but they're not then going to take action afterwards in the long term to really drive change. Again, I'm not talking about the people at the core. I'm specifically talking about the people. And then, man, I've seen disgusting things. People like influencers, dressed up girls like in like dresses, with like posing in front of burning cars, you know, with like, and making selfie. Man, you go on the internet, you'll see it.
You know what? I am so worried. Like there's so much crap out there, and I get like emotionally charged and just get really frustrated, right? So even watching that video, because it kind of like you never want to remember someone, you know, who's just died in that way. That's number one. But second, when people just, like you said, influence, take advantage of this and use it as a bit of content or just to grab some attention, it really boils my blood, and I've kept away from just consuming that to a certain extent.
Sometimes people just tell you about it, or like, you know, you scroll past it on your timeline and you just see that. And I'm with you. It makes my blood boil when I see that, and I get so angry about it. And I'm really starting to not question human mankind, but sometimes I look at those things and I'm like, what do those people think they're doing there? Like what goes through someone's mind to say that, okay, it's a good idea now to dress up, put makeup on, take my best social influencer friend, drive to downtown LA or wherever it is, you know, pose in front of like a burning police car in order to get clicks and likes on Instagram. Like, how effed up must your brain be if you think that's a good thing to do? Like, I don't know. Like,
I think it's not personal reflections on this, right? So I always try and saying, look, okay, so maybe what can we take away from this, right? I think a couple of things that come to my mind is, look, we live in a world, and the world will always be full of very, very diverse and extreme polarizing views, right? It's always existed, I think, since the dawn of humanity. It's just now you know about it, right? Before, whatever was happening, at the other end of the world, it was
other end of the world, like 30 kilometers away.
Yeah, for that was 30 kilometers. Even that was like extreme. So I think we'll always have that. We'll always have people sharing and doing some crazy, crazy, sick stuff out there, right? So you got to accept that there are extremes on both ends, and then you would hope to think, that as a human species, where we can tell good from evil on more or less. Okay, that's number one. Second, I think with this situation that's been happening, I think it's very important to do a lot of self-reflection on saying, look, well, you can't solve the world's problems, right? And it's good to lend your voice and, condemn certain things, etc., as any human being should be. But because your own time, and, let's be honest, everyone is busy with their own problems, right? And occasionally they raise a voice, but like you said, the action doesn't follow through, okay? Because action following through is a lot of effort, a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of battles and whatnot. So I would say pick a cause that you feel that resonates with you, and just over time, just, lend your voices to other things, but then stay true to your cause as well, And of course, you can always change causes if you feel that, it doesn't, there's a bigger play, or it gives you more that you can take away with. I think that's being very consistent. I say this because, whenever you get stopped by those charities on the high street, right, and they really pour their heart out to you, and you're trying to dodge them, and you get caught because you've made eye contact, and that's it. It's game over for you, right? That's it. And the thing is, I have a very simple way of just now dealing with that. I just say, look, there are thousands of causes out there, more charities out there. But I believe in X, Y, Z, and I believe that if I able to follow through this cause consistently, will have a bigger impact for me personally, but also for that cause, rather than spreading yourself so thin, so paper thin, just nothing happens.
Like everything, yeah. No, I'm completely with you, and I think the other thing about the actioning things, people should not you should not underestimate the sort of multiplier effect you can have by doing small things, right? Because if you you can go to a protest once and that's good, right? You can even go twice, but then you might stop it, right? If every day you sort of combat a little bit of whatever the cause it is, right? Doesn't need to be racism, can be sustainability, sorting out your plastic and all that. So, but let's stay with the racism, right? And every day, if you catch someone saying something in a slightly different way, or maybe you catch yourself in thinking about someone or something, or in a certain way, you need to battle it. And maybe also sometimes you need to speak up to people, and this to strangers might be a little bit more difficult, but sometimes even that needs to happen. But even within your closest circle, and this, I'm not saying that every time someone says, I'm not saying there's a lot of people always have really bad intention when they say something, but there's just certain jokes and so on.
You're programmed a certain way,
and sometimes you just need to
become a norm over
sometimes
time.
You just need to speak out in front of other people, and then you discuss it, and maybe they then slightly change your behavior, and the next time they then are in a group of people, they and then it spreads out. Absolutely. And I think this is where it's on. I mean, it's
I think we also have to be aware that we all have a bias, whether we like it or not, right? We are a product of our environment and our upbringing. it's always good to just even check yourself from time to time.
100%.
When you see something, right, you automatically think a certain way, you're biased, and you don't realize that you have a bias, right? And I think reprogramming yourself, and even in these protests, right, there's a lot of looting, there's a lot of burning of small businesses, which kind of makes you feel like that is so doesn't make sense, right? But I think it's easy for us to jump to the conclusion of labeling a community, saying, oh yeah, look, see that this is what happens, these are criminals, and you cannot let these. But I think we have to accept, right, that there's never a right way to protest, because it's a weird one, it's like, okay, do the silent protest, does it get you anywhere or whatever? Then there is it's very important, I think, to sometimes avoid jumping to the conclusion when you especially have not been in someone else's shoes that may be behaving that way, right? And you know what, a crime is a crime, wrong is a wrong, but I think we have to be careful not to jump to the conclusion
too quickly,
like, these riots and these these burning down of buildings and shops are happening in these areas, and these are underprivileged, blah blah blah. There's a lot of emotions. It's a very complex.
It is it's very emotionally loaded, right? And like I obviously, if they burn down, a little mom and pop shop that people had nothing to do with, that might even be people from their community, it is wrong. But at the same time, as you said, like, don't jump to a conclusion, because I understand that at one point, if after years and years and years and nothing changes, people might not just see another way in order to feel that they get heard, right? And it has happened over and over again. And if you look at history, like, that's at one point, that's how revolutions turn out, because otherwise, you might not get the change you're looking for, right? So it's a very thin line again, and I generally, would condemn any sort of violence and unlawful behavior. But I also get that if people feel we've been speaking up and up and up and nothing changes, and the other side is still showing unnecessary acts of violence, because that's what we're not protesting here about they're chopping down a wood or a forest or something like that, right? We're talking about they're protesting against people being murdered for no reason whatsoever, right? So if you then in turn say, like, okay, well, maybe then a car needs to burn, and it's not just it's
to get attention, right? It is to get attention.
It is difficult.
It's very emotionally driven. You cannot, I would say, it's very dangerous to try and assess the situation logically, right? It's like, no, okay, you should do this, X, Y, Z. It cannot just be done with logic alone. A lot of empathy is required. And, I worry that these protests, which started off, for once something, are now turning into something else. And before you know it, people are looting and protesting with the short-term memory thing, even forgetting why they're there in the first place. Exactly. And all the sacrifices that others have made. So it's a deep one, and it's not like we have the answers for sure. But I think, like you said, just being aware of it, being aware of your own personal bias, reflecting on what are some of the changes or the causes that you are backing, and are you doing enough action than talk, I think that sort of awareness is very important.
100%. And I think you can also turn it on the flip side, right? I think it's also important in all of that to remember that there's way too many bad apples in the crowd of like all policemen, right? And all law enforcement people. There's way too many, right? And they got away with way too much stuff over the years. But you would also need to remember there's a lot of good people in there as well, right? And because it's the same with like the protests, right? You said like, okay, there's like 100,000 people protesting and 100 are looting and burning down.
They get all the attention.
So they get all the attention. So you cannot suddenly say, okay, all protesters are looters and all. So, and I think it's important to also then flip to the side. Yeah, there's a lot of really bad apples in the police and law enforcement. But just because there is like a percentage doesn't mean
it's the same percentage everywhere, right? It's just like with the protesters. And I would say, I don't know, would good news ever make good headlines in that will take the majority of the attention? Just general good news, And I don't know whether it's have we been trained over time with so much media consumption that, in order to grab our attention, you need to see something of an extreme ends, for us to.
Yeah, but think about it, right?
Or is this a human, animalistic type of reaction?
I think honestly, like, I don't want to bash the media, but like it's how the media has specifically been operating the last, I don't know, whatever, 20 years or so, especially where it became more and more polarized, right? Where like a lot of the medias are becoming either this or that. And because think about it, right? On like the first page of a website from a news outlet or even on a newspaper, a senator or whatever, like, being photographed passing the bill that finally ends, like whatever, it changes like how police force is trained or something like this. And then, or a protester in black standing on a car that has been burned. What's the stronger image here, right? And whether, you know what I mean? It's just like.
So here's the thing though. Here's what I'm always like, I'm having these weird dilemma conversations with myself. So imagine there were only two news outlets in the world, right? They were both free, etc. One was always pushing good stories, and the other one was all like these bad stories, etc. Right? Like, who over time, who would get more attention?
Good question.
And that's why
I probably think the bad one, actually.
Yeah, I think, and you know what? The media is always to blame, right? But their business model is just to get eyeballs.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And they figured it out. To get more eyeballs, show extreme images, show people dying, show people being murdered, Whereas, somebody that's, signing the bill that's changing, like, it's a fundamental, it's not as.
Yeah, and then you can argue, and I think that we're getting into.
We're all at fault, right?
We're getting into a rabbit hole here, but like, then you can argue, like, okay, are they just supplying what is demanded? Because maybe humans just want to see that.
Well, especially when they're in competition with one another, right? Then if they know that certain people are addicted to it's just like drugs, right? Well, certain things are more addictive, like drugs, bad news, or whatever. And especially when there's a competition, no doubt, then if it's to do with money or the way they're commercially compensated and whatnot. And I think, look, and we're definitely down in a rabbit hole, so we'll come back up. But I took a decision in my household with my kids, etc. We used to consume a lot of just TV. The TV would always be on in the background. So 5-6 years ago, I just said no more TV, and this was a big step for us in the family. Like this is, the TV has been part of the family for the past, however many years, and they were like, no, even if we have it switched off and unplugged, we will find a temptation. Switch it back on or whatever. So I just took the TV out, and you know what? It worked for a while, but then of course the kids started to watch YouTube and other smaller screen more. But it up to us to really decide what we consume and how
But I
it
think
affects you.
but I think it makes a big difference, right? So
It
say
does. It does.
I haven't had a TV in I don't know how long, and especially in this flat now, conscious decision not to have a TV, like not even not like connected to
Yeah,
cable,
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
no TV, because what it does, it's like the click is so easy, it's way too easy, and then you actually
It's
don't and then you
mindless flicking
don't
through.
consume what you are in control of consuming, because you make a decision. You're only then in
Mm.
control of consuming what the people, the programs give you to consume at that point in time. So at least when you are on your laptop or on your phone, you make a conscious decision, more conscious decision, what you actually
More conscious decision. Yeah, yeah.
more
I think
conscious.
you're still controlled. We talked about the personalized content,
Algorithms,
but
yeah,
at least it's initiated by you, and it's a little bit more conscious decision. You're right.
yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been one of our more, I would say, more emotionally driven, a little bit more of a serious topic. But I think
Yeah,
it is a good one to debate, because it's an important thing, and if I feel better for just sharing my views on the matter, not to say whether I'm taking lots of action or not, but
mm-hmm.
it's more self-reflection,
Yeah.
than anything else.
I also think that like doing it in this form, because we've argued, right? Maybe we're also not just people who jump on the bandwagon and we
Yeah.
think we're gonna need to. But I think like having actually debate with someone about the topic is definitely doing more than just reposting a
Yes.
picture or something like that. That's just I don't know. And we said we're gonna cover it, and now we went on for 36 minutes, so I guess we're not going to go to the other topics because we want to keep it rather short. But I think it's a good one, and I think conversation is the most important one and needs to continue to happen. You need to take actions beyond just participating in a protest and retweeting a couple of things right now. And then really change can happen. At the end of the day, I think what people still underestimate, and I sometimes need to remind myself, the most powerful tool we all have is our vote. As long as as long as we are live in a democracy, that is and also not just our vote, but everything that comes around it, which is like encouraging also other people to vote, which is for me part of the action, part of the multiplier effect, right? It's like debating with people why they should maybe vote a certain way, why they should support a certain cause, because that will really drive change, that will drive institutional change more than what a lot of people do right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this point comes to mind. I think the point of debating is so important, and I think a lot of people, when they, I don't know whether it's debating or having a deep conversation, they fall into the trap of thinking that they're there to argue their case and win the debate. Debates and deep conversations are always about, can I learn something new?
Exactly.
Could I be wrong with my views on this? Right? And I think, I don't know whether it's a moment in your life where you switch gears or whatever, but, I now, ultimately, we all want to seek the truth or be better informed. And by engaging in deep conversations like this and having debates is not about me or you being right. It's around, let's see whether we can get to a better version of the truth based on our experiences, and if that's the aim, debates will be so much more engaging rather than trying to prove somebody that's wrong, or trying to air your side of the argument or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, right? If you just if you only talk with people about topics that you're gonna agree on, how are you supposed to grow from it?
Yeah,
because you're
exactly.
just gonna then, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. So sometimes I think it's even important to seek conversations that seek conversation with people that there might be a little bit of controversy in there, or people are gonna disagree with you. And as long as you said, as long as you go into that conversation, not expecting to convince the other person, but just have a conversation and potentially, and also like, you know, not say like I need to then change my opinion, but like at least take someone else's viewpoint and then move from there. So yeah, good
stuff. All right,
cool.
All right. Well, I think we've done 40 minutes on that. So
Bang on.
why don't you read us out, and until next time, huh?
Cool. Yeah, so thanks guys for listening. Again, if you're on YouTube, please like the video, leave us a comment, subscribe. If you're on Spotify, please download the podcast, tell everyone about it. Have a great week, stay safe still, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Peace.